What's up? I got some shower thoughts today. If you've been following me at all, you know I'm in the middle of reading the Bible cover to cover, and I'm doing a lot of exploration right now. Listening to the Case for Christ audiobook. I'm reading the Bible. I'm doing a bunch of research. I'm arguing with a bunch of people on my YouTube videos in the comments. It's been crazy, but I've been thinking about it a lot, thinking about all this stuff, and I have this kind of concept that I want to do a blog post about, and I just kind of want to throw it out on here. Um, just to get it out. But it's pretty interesting. So hear me out. I know if you look at the title, you're like, "What are you talking about?" Um, so I'll start where when I read the Old Testament and I watched the Jordan Peterson Exodus seminar, one of the things that really struck me was how my view of the like Leviticus and Deuteronomy and like the Old Testament laws and all that, how my view of that changed because, the Ten Commandments are pretty solid, but, if you look at like the laws, there's a lot of crazy, wacky stuff in there. I know one of the ones that I thought was really funny is like if two men are fighting and a woman grabs the testicles of the other man to try to save her husband, you have to cut her hands off. And I just thought I was like, damn, it's crazy because you think about it, and it's like the Jewish women must have been grabbing testicles back then, like for them to put that law in there. But with that aside, joking aside, when you look at all the sacrifices that are lined out and how you have to sacrifice and what they're for and the festivals and stuff, you get this picture of like um, kind of like the idea of an operating system that you would have on your computer or your phone. It's almost like um, the basis for society is like encapsulated in those sacrifices and the reasons. So if you look at the sacrifices, for example, they basically have to do with um, sanitation or cleanliness, gratitude, community, like bolstering community and tightening community, governance, and justice, right? All these kind of pillars of society, modern society, and how to organize humans in a way that works are present within these laws. And albeit there's like all kinds of kind of crazy implementations, but underpinning it, that's kind of what you see. And it just kind of seems like this ancient primitive way of starting to organize society in a way that is going to be functional, and it's anchored with these rituals and these sacrifices as a way of like physically remembering and physically like doing stuff to concrete those concepts into the society, right? And to me, it seems like an operating system. It's like an analog, and that's just something that really popped out at me, and I've been thinking about that a lot. And when I'm in the Gospels now, right? I just got to Romans, and when you think of Christ coming and the way everything changes, it's like an update, right? It's like over time, it's like, oh, new OSX Sonoma or whatever's here. It's like over time, um, as we've increased in technology, as cities got bigger, societies grew, they become more dynamic, they become more complicated. Everything becomes more complicated, and there's different problems and challenges. Okay, this old way of looking at stuff, while it still has a lot of merits, kind of needs to evolve to something new that's going to work for this new age that people found themselves in. And when you look at Jesus and his teachings and the way he kind of augmented the old law and kind of got rid of some stuff and changes it to this new concept of like salvation and selflessness and like all the things Jesus taught of, having faith in God and God dying or Jesus dying for your sins so you're saved and like all these kind of things. It kind of served as this new operating system. And whether you think that that was divinely ordained or just a natural phenomenon, um, whatever. And to get to the anthill thing, one reason why, because you look at one reason why I say an anthill is because when you look at the complexity of these things, even if you look at the Old Testament, if you look at the New Testament, Jesus, the way he kind of fulfilled the old prophecies and the complexity of what he taught and the intricacies, right? It's a lot like you might say, oh, it has to be divine because it's so complicated in the way it all connects, and it's like so it's so like in tune with human psychology, and I'm watching the Jordan Peterson seminar on the Gospels right now, similar to the Exodus one, and there's all this like psychological significance to the teachings of Jesus that really like get to the core of humanity and being and consciousness and like what it's like to be a person and how to orient yourself in the world, and it's really profound, right? It's like pretty amazing. And so you might say, oh, it has to be from God then. But I almost think it's like I have an idea that it's a spontaneous emergence, right? In the same way you get a spider web or an anthill, right? This spider's not that smart to make a spider web, but it somehow can do it, right? It's not like the spider's like, I'm gonna connect this and make this perfect freaking thing with this pattern and da da da. It's like not thinking that. It just kind of happens spontaneously. Like an anthill, if you ever looked at like an anthill underground, a lot of times these ant colonies, the shit they do is amazing. It's like literally amazing. They have ventilation and they have like they have all their different roles and they can band together and coordinate in ways that's like, how could an ant ever coordinate it to make something that complex and that works so good? I think you can kind of apply that lens to Christianity where, it's almost like that anthill analogy, but it's in the cognitive realm, right? It's in the realm of like philosophy and like thought, right? And consciousness less than it is manifested in the physical world. And I think in the same way, Christianity works really well and has worked really well. Part of the reason it spread so well because it is applicable to the human psyche in a way that if you follow it and you go off of it, you get good outcomes. But here's the thing, to go back to the analogy of the operating system. Eventually, I feel like we're due for another update. And there's a couple reasons I think that. And I've had this thought floating around in my head for a long time. I don't know how well I can share it, but I think in the same way the Old Testament and like Levitical laws and all this had to evolve into modern Christianity, to kind of stay up to date with the way things were in the world. Things have been changing a lot since Jesus's time. And while I think Christianity still works pretty good, it's not, and I'm not here to like shit on it, but I think there's some problems with it that make it less effective than it used to be. One of the main ones, and I've had this thought for a long time, is that back in the time of Jesus, back in the time of the Israelites, miracles and crazy things like the seas parting or like someone getting raised from the dead or like a volcano exploding, like, or all these, Jonah and the whale, like dude living in a fish for 3 days, like all these things are like crazy, right? It's like, well, that's not real. But people, I think back then it was so much easier to believe this because of things like volcanoes and lightning and like other natural phenomenons, earthquakes, and just all kinds of crazy things you would see. It's like, oh, the sea parting, it just chalk it up to a freaking tornado. It's like the same thing, right? So it's not hard to believe that stuff. And same thing, I think, in the time of Jesus, people believed a lot more in witchcraft and seance and like, demons and supernatural things, right? It's like it wasn't like out of the realm of possibility for anyone to do a miracle. It's like people aren't like, miracles aren't real, right? Yeah, of course they're real. More so, right? Not maybe 100%, but more so. People like looked at even other humans as gods, and like there was a lot more superstition and stuff like that. So nowadays, very much less so, right? Because of science, right? We understand tornadoes, we understand earthquakes, we understand these things. So the claims of the Old Testament and of Jesus seem a lot more preposterous to like your average person, right? Because of the understanding and the way the things we know. Not to say they didn't happen, maybe they did, but let's just say they didn't happen, right? And they're preposterous. Like like even if you're a Christian, I think you can get behind the mindset of like, this is crazy, right? This is some crazy claims, right? That like the seas parted or like that a dude lived in a fish for 3 days or whatever, right? If you believe that stuff, you could see how it's like kind of hard to believe. It's kind of unbelievable. And I think in this modern age where we have so much information and so much science, to be able to look back on that stuff and say, okay, that's probably not real, or it's like reasonable to doubt it and think that it's not real, right? If you're going to believe in Christianity today, there's almost this like cognitive dissonance you have to have where you're aware that it's crazy and it probably isn't real, but you still are going to believe it. And it creates this, it kind of requires you to like suspend disbelief in a way that back in the time of Jesus or in the Old Testament you didn't have to, right? So there's a new requirement placed on a modern human to believe these things, right? And that's one reason why I feel like Christianity is starting to become less effective and neutered, and needs an update. It has a problem, right? That's happening, and I've seen this in a lot of people in my life, in a lot of Christians. I mean, humans have this problem of being like delusional, or like compartmentalizing things and not accepting things that they don't like, and kind of having like a weird, I don't know what exactly you would call that. I think it's cognitive dissonance. It's like knowing that the seas don't just part, right? But still believing that they parted, right? Something like that. Um, and the thing is that if you have, not everyone, right? But sometimes if you have to believe that stuff, it's almost like you open up yourself to this side of this unhealthy way of relating to the truth, right? Where you're able to kind of just push stuff aside that doesn't make sense, right? And you're able to just ignore things that are inconvenient. And I think that's kind of a habit, and that's something that can become unlocked with people of faith, right? Where what's required for them to have faith also serves as a negative aspect of their mind that can cause a lot of problems in modern society and for families and different things. And it's just something I've seen a lot of. And like I said, I'm not just saying just religious people do this. Like, people do this to deal with trauma and deal with things no matter what, of like kind of just ignoring obvious things, right, that they don't like or that's inconvenient. But I do think that makes it different these days, and kind of makes me wonder what's going to happen next, or what might supersede the modern Christian faith, if anything. Um, I have a feeling it might end up being something to do with AI, or technology, like a techno theology, something like that. I don't know. I mean, it's crazy when I've done a whole blog post on this, called New Gods, but when you look at the way people talked about God in the Old Testament, it's getting eerily similar to the way people talk about algorithms and AI today. I'll just share a quick example. When I got offered to do this TikTok live thing a while ago, and the dude was telling me like best practices. And he's like, so the algorithm on TikTok, it can hear what you're saying, right? So if you say certain things or you're not engaging, it'll like demote you, right? If you say certain things that it doesn't like, it'll push you down. But if you're talking about this and that and you're acting in this way, then it'll promote you. And at the end of the day, the TikTok algorithm's kind of like a black box, in the same way God was, right? Where it's the same thing, where it's like, if you do this and that, God will smite you. If you do this and that, God will bless you. And the language this dude was explaining the TikTok algorithm to me in was so similar. And it's kind of the same thing, where if you do good on TikTok, you get money, you get followers, you get the things you want if you say the right things and you please the algorithm, right? Same way God, if you burn a freaking cow the right way and cut the fat off the liver and burn it, it's a pleasing aroma to God and you get blessed, right? It's like kind of crazy, same thing, same vibe. And so I think that's what might be coming down the pipe. That might be what's next. I know that's maybe a simplistic view of it, but I kind of view these religions in general as like kind of like an anthill or a spider web. It's like something that spontaneously like manifests out of collective humanity, in the same way an anthill. There's no one ant that's like, here's our plans, and you go do that, and you go do that, and like, here's what we're gonna do, and we're gonna do this. It's like the anthill and the technology that's in the anthill, the ventilation, the food, the way they grow the food in there, the way they connect everything, the way they defend everything, the way they coordinate and communicate. It's all just like spontaneously manifesting out of a system, right? In the same way we have this human system, and out of our human systems manifest these religions and these operating systems we call religions. And I think some are more robust than others in different ways. It's like Hinduism's like freaking Linux, and like freaking Christianity's like OS X, and like there's these different ones, and some have pros and cons, and some people like different ones, and they work in different ways, and like it just seems like an apt analogy is a way to think about it. That's interesting to me. I was like in the shower today, and I was just like thinking about this. I'll do this thing where I like have a podcast in my head, right? Where I just watched Dan Bilzerian on this dude Bryce Crawford podcast, and Bryce is like a wholesome kind of white bread Christian vibe, and Dan's just like going hard at the Jews like crazy in the interview. But I was just thinking about that pod, and I was imagining myself talking to Bryce and explaining this concept to him, kind of how I view everything. And I was kind of like putting it together, and then I was like, oh, I'll just do a YouTube about this, and I think I'll do a blog post about it to solidify my thoughts, and maybe make like a proper official YouTube video of it. But I don't know. It just seems so. It seems right. Feels kind of right. Feels kind of like a good way to view it. I'm getting a call from Grab because my food is here, so I'm gonna dip. But anyways, thanks for watching. Click the link in my description if you wanna follow me in my blog. I'm not on social media, but my blog's free. So if you subscribe, you'll get my updates and my posts in your inbox each week. And you can just reply and say what's up to me if you want to talk. Or there's always a link to book a call with me if you want to talk about any of this stuff. Sorry if that ringing is in your ears too much. Should have put my thing on Do Not Disturb. Anyways, peace out.